Christine had spent a quiet afternoon in her house in Flagstaff, sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, laughter from her daughter in the background. It was the sort of serenity that she had struggled for, the sort of serenity that she had assumed she would never know. She was cutting up vegetables for supper, the smell of herbs wafting through the air, when the clang of a car door slamming outside made her pause. It wasn't rare for friends to drop by, but there was something in the weight of those footsteps trudging up her driveway that clenched her chest. When she looked out the window, her heart hiccuped. Standing there a little older, a little more frayed, but somehow still the same, was Kody. He was not smiling. He was not angry, he was something different altogether. A combination of desperation and determination. Christine stood stuck for a moment, not knowing if she should open the door or leave him there in the cold. But curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of the woman she once was, drew her toward the handle. As she stepped inside, Kody didn't say anything at first. He regarded her as if he were trying to commit her face to memory, as if he were searching for the Christine she once was. "Hi," he said at last. His tone softer than she recalled. "Can we talk?" Christine paused, holding on to the doorframe. Months had passed since they had last talked face to face. Months since she'd seen him leave her life without a glance over his shoulder. She didn't know if she owed him anything anymore. Not even a conversation. But something in the way he spoke was different. Not bossy, not standoffish. Just human. She moved out of the way, allowing him inside, though her defenses were up. He looked around her house, the new photos on the wall, the small touches that indicated a life remade, and Christine could see a flash of something in his eyes. Regret, perhaps. Loss. He cleared his throat, as if swallowing something that did not want to be swallowed. "I know I don't have the right just to appear," he started, standing awkwardly in the center of the living room. "But I've been reconsidering a lot of things these past few weeks. About us. About everything I let go." Christine crossed her arms, resting against the counter, holding herself together. She wanted to know why he was there, but she didn't want to make it simple for him either. He had been the one to opt for space, to opt for others instead of her, repeatedly. Kody's gaze flicked to the floor, then back to hers. "I screwed up," he stated. "And I don't mean the little things. I mean the big things. The way I treated you, the way I didn't stand up for you when I should have." Christine's breath hitched, but she'd be damned if she'd let it show. She recalled the many nights she'd wept alone, the dawn she'd risen to understand she wasn't a priority, the years of excuses and estrangement. And here he was, standing in her living room, uttering the words she once pleaded to hear. "What do you want from me, Kody?" she asked at last, her tone level. He inhaled sharply and groped inside his coat pocket, his fingers closing around a small box. It wasn't covered, merely a plain wooden box with a brass catch. He held it out to her, his hand shaking slightly. "This is for you," he said. "I've had it for a long time. I didn't give it to you then because I thought I had more time. I thought we'd work it out eventually, but I was wrong." Christine didn't go for it. Not yet. Her brain was spinning. Was this some sort of trickery, an attempt to draw her back into bad habits? Or was it real? Kody stepped closer, his voice lowered to near a whisper. "I don't think you can forgive me. I couldn't bear knowing that I never let you know how I felt, that I never even tried, even once, to make things okay." Christine's gaze darted to the box, and then back to his face. She felt the pressure of the moment bearing down on her. The man standing before her wasn't the same Kody she'd left behind. Or perhaps he was. And this was another side of the same messy person she'd known for years. The air between them was charged with unspoken past. The laughter, the fights, the broken vows, and the rare moments of actual love that had briefly bound them to one another. Christine's pulse accelerated. Not with excitement, but with the whirlpool of emotion churning within her. Kody finally put the box on the coffee table and backed away. "I'll leave it there," he said. "You don't have to open it now. You don't have to open it ever, but it's yours. And so is whatever is left of me." Christine did not move, did not speak. She simply watched him, attempting to read the good intentions in his eyes. A part of her wanted to shoo him away, to preserve the calm she had struggled so long to establish. But another part, the part that still recalled the way it had felt to be selected, even for a moment, wanted to see what was in the box. Kody moved toward the door, resting his hand on the handle. "I'll go," he said quietly. "But I had to try." As the door shut behind him, Christine stood there, the stillness of the house falling around her once more. Her eyes went to the box, its small space somehow dominating the whole room with questions. What would you do if the past you left behind suddenly came to your doorstep with one last secret? Christine's life in Flagstaff had slowly become something she hardly knew, for the best. No longer was her morning a whirl of tension and unvoiced resentment, but rather a rush of fresh coffee aroma, clinking mugs, and warm conversation of her daughter, relating back to her about plans at school. She had colored the kitchen a pale sage green, a color that encouraged you to inhale a little deeper. A line of small potted plants sat on the windowsill, thriving, something that Christine felt proud of. They were like her, in a sense, strong, developing despite what they had been through. She had learned to love being alone, but not the lonely kind. This was different, this was tranquility. The evenings often found her curled up on the couch, with a book or a favorite show, her dog resting at her feet. Sometimes, she'd scroll through old family photos, not to dwell on the past, but to remind herself how far she'd come. There was no ache in her chest anymore when she thought about Kody, just a sense of finality, like closing a book you'd long outgrown. It hadn't been simple getting here. The first few months after she left him had been a haze of second guesses, guilt, and the biting sting of having to begin anew. But she discovered that beginning anew wasn't the end, it was the start. She was proud of the woman who gazed back at her in the mirror these days. Stronger, wiser, more sure of what she was worthy of. But occasionally the past doesn't knock and ask if it can come back in. That afternoon, the sky was an immovable blue, the type that seemed to insist you be cheerful. Christine had spent the morning shuffling the living room furniture around. Nothing too dramatic, but enough to make the room feel new. She'd opened the windows to let the fresh air blow in, and the muffled sound of children playing somewhere down the street drifted through the house. It seemed like a good day. A safe day. At about noon she set a pot of soup, whistling to herself as she chopped onions. Soft music came from the corner speaker, something cheerful and bright, the music of a woman who'd regained her stride. She was chopping halfway through slicing carrots, when the crunch of gravel outside caught her attention. It was soft at first, a slight change in the background hum, but it grew louder. Tires on her drive. Christine frowned. No one was supposed to be visiting. Her friends always called ahead to say they were coming by. She cut the music off, her hands still on the cutting board, and listened. A car door slammed shut, and then came the sound of cautious, heavy footsteps. An odd fluttering began to rise in her chest. Not fear per se, but a heightened sensitivity. She dried her hands on a dish towel, and moved towards the front window, her curiosity overwhelming her. One look, and her heart stuttered. There he was. Kody, standing in sunlight like some impossible reminder that the past she'd worked so hard to create still lingered outside her walls. His hair was a bit more disheveled, his shoulders heavier with unspoken things. Christine's initial reaction was to back off, to flee where he wouldn't be able to see her. Instead, she froze, observing him tugging at his coat, as if attempting to locate the courage to knock. When his hand eventually reached towards the doorbell, Christine breathed in. She reminded herself she was only going to listen to him, that she didn't owe him anything but some polite words. Nevertheless, her fingers lingered a moment too long on the doorknob. She pushed open the door, and the chill breeze swept in between them. For a moment, neither of them said a word. Kody's eyes roamed her face, and for an instant she could have sworn that she saw relief there. "Hi," he said finally, his tone softer than she recalled. Christine did not smile. "Kody, I was in the area," he began, but even he seemed to know how weak that sounded. "I wanted to talk. Just for a few minutes." She stepped aside slowly, letting him in. Her home suddenly felt smaller with him in it, his presence carrying years of history and hurt. He looked around. noticing the little touches that made the space hers. The framed photos, the cozy throw blankets, the absence of anything tied to their shared past. "I like what you've done with the place," he said quietly. Christine said nothing. She shifted to lean on the kitchen counter, folding her arms across her chest as she gazed at him. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he went on, "about how things ended, about the way I did everything. And I see now that I didn't let you go. I pushed you away, over and over again." She remained impassive, but within, the words moved her. She recalled all the effort she'd made to let him know she felt invisible, how he'd told her she was imagining things, how she'd been made to feel like a weight for desiring to be loved wholeheartedly. Sometimes the words you've been waiting to hear don't have the impact you expected them to. They cut deeper. Kody shifted restlessly, as if the tension between them was too great. "I know it's late, too late perhaps, but I can't keep acting like I didn't care for you. I did. I still do, sort of." Christine swallowed hard but refused to look away. She wasn't going to give him the power to rock her again. Then, as if by rote, he reached into his coat pocket and produced that little wooden box. Smooth to the touch, aged to perfection, the clasp a mite tarnished. He held it out as if it were 100 pounds. "This is for you," he intoned, his tone low. "I should have given it to you years ago. I kept promising myself I'd have time, that we'd mend things. But time ran out." Christine gazed at it, but didn't get up to pick it up. The air was charged with tension, the sort that made each second drag on like an eternity. She wondered what might be contained within. A keepsake, an apology, or something else. He put it down on the coffee table between them. "It's yours. No strings. You don't even have to open it if you don't want to." There was a finality to his voice that Christine couldn't pin down. It wasn't the theatrics she had half hoped for. It was softer, sadder. Kody stepped back toward the door. "I just wanted you to have it. That's all." And poof, he was no longer there. Christine standing alone in her living room. The box still untouched in the middle of the room like an unasked question. The soup continued to simmer in the kitchen, but the house no longer felt warm. It felt held, between the life she had created and the past that had just walked out of her door once more. Her eyes continued to drift back to that box, as if it would somehow open itself and spill the truth onto the floor. If you were Christine, would you open the box? Or maintain your peace and leave the past closed up? The box lingered for hours, its tiny presence dominating the whole room. Christine attempted to divert her attention, folding laundry, surfing her phone, even going out for a bit to water her plants. But with every pass of the coffee table, she found herself glancing its way like it had an invisible tug on her. It wasn't curiosity. It was the heaviness of what it all meant. This wasn't a box. It was Kody's final word. Or perhaps his first sincere one in years. By the late afternoon, the sun had changed, and the light was longer, casting long shadows in the living room. The wooden box glowed, the grain of the wood shining softly, as if it knew she was undecided. Christine perched on the couch edge, elbows on knees, gazing at it as if it was going to blink. She considered what could be inside. A letter perhaps, that would tell her why he'd come after so long. Or a gift he'd given her some time ago, when promises actually counted. Or perhaps something entirely different. Her phone beeped on the counter. It was a text from Janelle. "Hey, everything okay? Heard from a neighbor someone saw Kody's truck outside your place." Christine let out a sigh. News spread fast in their world, even without the sound of cameras. She typed out a reply swiftly. "Yeah, he stopped by. Dropped something off. Not sure what to say about it." Janelle replied almost immediately. "Be careful. Sometimes closure is just another door he wants to walk back through." Christine looked at those words for a very long time. Janelle was right. Kody had a knack for showing up just when she was getting her feet on solid ground. Like he could smell her peace and needed to disrupt it. Nevertheless, the box lingered, whispering questions she couldn't quite quiet. Some secrets are risky, but it is the not knowing that makes you stay awake late at night. When dinner came, she still hadn't opened it. Her earlier soup had congealed, untouched. Christine decanted a glass of wine, and sat down again, at last drawing the box to her. Her hands ran over the sleek edges. The clasp clicked gently when she pressed against it, but she didn't open it immediately. She closed her eyes, half preparing herself. When she finally raised the lid, there was a whispered whiff of cedar. Lying inside, covered in a piece of tattered blue cloth, was an envelope. Her heart beat violently against her ribs. It was her name scrawled on paper in Kody's handwriting. The same swooping letters she'd once known with a cursory glance on birthday cards and notes. She put the envelope down and glanced further into the box. Beneath the cloth lay a silver bracelet, dainty, with small charms swinging from it. She knew exactly what it was. It was the bracelet she'd gazed at in a tiny shop, their first years in Utah. She had once tried it on, smiling in the mirror, but had returned it because finances were strained back then. She never spoke of it again. She had recalled saying to herself that if Kody had seen it, if he'd remembered, it would have meant something. And here it was. All these years later, in her hands. Christine carefully unwrapped the envelope. There was a letter inside. The paper creased at the folds, as though it had been read too many times. She started to read. Christine, I've held on to this for years, and I have no idea why it took so long for me to pass it on to you. Perhaps it was because I knew that once I did, there would be no reason remaining for me to cling. I saw you attempting to try on this bracelet in this shop, and I recall thinking how much it suited you, how much you warranted little things like this. I told myself I'd come back for it, and I did, but then life got in the way. Or maybe I let it get in the way. Maybe I thought there would always be another moment. I was wrong. She paused, swallowing hard. The words were careful, deliberate. Kody wasn't one to write letters. Not like this. She continued reading. I know that I let you down in more ways than I can begin to count. I know that I made you feel invisible, not worthy, and small. That was not who I wished to be. I don't anticipate this to take anything away. And I don't anticipate forgiveness. I just wish for you to hold this. A reminder that even when I didn't behave as though I did, I noticed you. I saw this woman who bore this family when I couldn't, who was worthy of better than what I provided. And I'm sorry. Kody. Christine placed the letter on the table slowly, her hands shaking a little. The apology was too late and insufficient. Yet it was also something she'd never really hoped to hear from him. It roused a complicated mix of feelings inside of her: relief, anger, sorrow, and perhaps even a small dose of gratitude. She sat back, the bracelet shining in her hand. A part of her wanted to fling it back into the box and stuff it in the far recesses of a closet to shield herself from whatever this was. Another part wanted to put it on, not as Kody's token but as a symbol that she had been noticed, even if it was too late for it to make a difference. The past is great at making itself out to be a gift when it's actually a test. She put the bracelet on her nightstand, and the moonlight gleamed on it. She wasn't quite sure what she was going to do with it yet. The next morning her phone rang around 9 a.m. She knew the number the moment it came through. Mary. They hadn't been talking much in weeks, but there was no confusion about the clipped voice. When she picked up, I heard Kody dropped by, Mary said point blank. Christine exhaled a slow breath. News does travel quickly. Mary paused. He's been different lately, a lot quieter. I think he's coming to terms with what he's lost. Christine chuckled softly. But it wasn't necessarily humorous. Or he's just pitying himself. I'm not arguing for him, Mary said, but I am warning you. Watch out. When he gets like that, he can get you thinking that he's changed. And maybe he has changed. But I don't think it's going to be enough. Christine considered the letter once more. The way the words had been almost painfully honest. I'm not thinking about letting him back in, Mary. That's not what this is about. Good, Mary said, but her voice held an edge, as if she wasn't so sure. As soon as they hung up, Christine felt like she needed to get her head clear. She went for a walk around the neighborhood, the crisp morning air slicing through the fog in her brain. But even as she attempted to concentrate on the crunch of leaves under her feet, her mind kept drifting back to that box, that letter, that bracelet. By the time she was home, a small padded envelope awaited her on her front porch. No return address. Her stomach did a flip. She picked it up slowly, her mind reeling. She opened it and discovered a Polaroid photograph within. It was a photo of her, taken years prior, in the kitchen of their former home. She was laughing, mid-action, holding a tray of cookies. In the corner of the image, barely perceptible, was the shadow of Kody. On the back, in the same curlicued handwriting, were the words, "I wish I'd told you then." Christine placed the photo on the table, her heart racing. This was no longer merely an apology. This was Kody reaching into the past, bringing fragments of her life into the present. She had no idea if it was closure or a warning. The rest of the day passed in a haze. She couldn't decide whether to confront him, return the box, or simply ignore it all and hope he stayed away. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. As night began to fall, she refilled her wine glass and sat on the couch, the letter laid out before her. She read it once more slowly this time, searching for underlying meaning between the words. And she found it, not in what he was saying, but in what he wasn't. There was no talk of tomorrow, no hint of reconciliation, only a recognition of yesterday. Sometimes the most dangerous thing a person can offer you is the truth. Because once you have it, you cannot unknow it. Christine understood she had a decision to make. She could work from the perspective of treating the box as an ending, a last chapter, or she could view it as the initial crack in a door she believed she'd slammed shut forever. The issue was, which option would preserve her peace? Christine did not get much sleep that night. Every time she tried to close her eyes, she remembered that Polaroid, in suspended time, her younger self smiling in the golden light of the kitchen, totally unaware of what the years to come had in store for her. She kept on thinking when he took it. Had he been there standing silently, observing her, waiting for a moment like this? Or had it been a coincidence? Something he discovered afterwards. At 3 a.m., she lost the battle to sleep. She crept into the kitchen, made a cup of tea, and sat at the table, gazing at the photograph in the dim light. She turned it over once more, tracing the writing with her thumb. "I wish I'd told you then." Told her what? That he loved her? That he noticed her? That he was already on the way out? When the sun finally came up, Christine had decided. She was not going to let Kody continue to send her little ghosts from the past. She was going to go to him, not to reawaken anything, but to establish a hard-lasting line. She called him just after 8 a.m. The phone rang long enough that she thought he might not answer. But then his voice came through, low and tired. "Christine, Kody," she said evenly. "We need to talk, face to face." A pause. Then, "All right. Where?" "Neutral ground," she replied. "The diner off Main Street. 2 hours." He agreed without argument, which made her more uneasy than if he'd fought her on it. The diner was almost deserted when she got there. She sat in a booth at the back, far enough from the entrance that she could see him come in. She got coffee and wrapped her hands around the cup, warming herself with the heat. Kody came in a minute or two late. He was different. Older, more worn out. His hair was longer than she'd seen it before. His jacket disheveled, but his eyes were the same, quick to scan the restaurant before focusing in on her. He eased into the booth opposite her. "You're looking well," he said. Christine cut through the niceties. "Why did you send me that picture?" He sat back, slowly breathing out. "Because it's the truth. It was one of the happiest moments I ever saw you, and I didn't say what I should have said that day." "And what was that?" she demanded. "That I was proud of you. That you turned that house into home when I couldn't. That I watched you holding the whole family together, and I never said a word because I didn't think you needed to hear it." Christine's jaw clenched. "You're right, you didn't say it, and you didn't behave as if you did either. So why now? Why bring this up all these years later?" He stared at his hands. "Because I discovered the picture in a box last month. And when I looked at it, it struck me how much I let get away from me. Not you, but all we had. I don't want anything from you, Christine. I don't want you to think I never noticed." She watched him for a long time, attempting to measure if this was another of his patterns. Guilt followed by just enough exposure to make people ease up on him. But there was something different in his voice. "You've given me that bracelet, the letter, and now this photograph. Do you know what that does to me?" she asked softly. "I'm trying to make peace with myself," he admitted. "And maybe with you, if you'll let me." Christine shook her head. "Peace doesn't come from stirring up the past. It comes from leaving it where it belongs." Kody didn't protest. He leaned over into his jacket pocket, took out another envelope, and pushed it across the table to her. This is the last thing I'll send your way. After this, I'll leave you alone. I promise. Christine didn't grab for it immediately. What is it? Open it when you're ready, he replied, flatly. She could sense the weight of it, something more substantial than paper, but left her hands clasped in her lap. If I read this, is it going to do anything? That's for you to decide, he said. They sat there for a few beats, the clinking of silverware and murmur of conversation, carrying the space between them. At last Christine got up. I'll read it, but not here. Kody nodded curtly. Fair enough. She stepped outside of the diner, envelope clutched in her hand, and felt the familiar combination of anger and curiosity warring within her. She reminded herself she should just toss it away. She reminded herself that nothing good ever came from allowing Kody's words into her head again. But by the time she arrived home, the envelope was seared into the palm of her hand. She sank onto the couch, breathed deeply, and ripped it open. There was a folded piece of paper and a little worn key. She unfolded the paper. Christine, if you're reading this, I need you to know something I've never said out loud to anyone. Not Mary, not Janelle, not Robin. There's a storage shed on Pine Hill Road, number 42. This lock opens it. There's all I stored but couldn't look at. Letters, pictures, things I should have returned to you years ago. I don't want them now. They're yours, or no one's. Go there if you wish. Burn the whole thing if you'd prefer. But it's up to you. Kody Christine glared at the page, her heart racing. A storage unit, with items he'd held back from her all this time? Why? She rotated the key in her palm. It was small, brass, a little mottled. A part of her wanted to put it in a drawer and ignore it. Another part, the part that had made her sit here staring at that box for hours, had to know what was inside. She waited until the following morning to make up her mind. The storage unit was situated on the outskirts of town, a peaceful location she'd driven past dozens of times without ever noticing. The air was cool as she approached Unit 42, the key held tightly in her hand. The lock clicked open with less difficulty than she'd expected. She pulled up the door, and the faint scent of dust and paper emerged. There were 3 big boxes inside, neatly stacked. She pushed the first one towards her, and opened it. The final layer was a collection of photographs, dozens of them, of their family over the years. Birthdays, holidays, everyday days. But as she went through them, she saw something odd. In each and every photo, she was laughing, smiling, or looking at someone else. And in nearly all of them, Kody was gazing at her. Her gut nodded. The second box was packed with notebooks. She opened one and read Kody's script. Page after page of musings, jottings, remembrances. Some were ordinary, shopping lists, itinerary plans. Others were stark, confessional writings on their relationship, on his uncertainties, on his regrets. She discovered one from the previous year of their breakup. She's slipping away from me and I don't know how to stop it. Or maybe I don't have the courage to try. I keep thinking about that day in the kitchen. The cookies, the light. She didn't see me watching her. I think I wanted her to know I was there. But I didn't move, didn't say a word. The third box contained little things. The scarf she'd lost one winter, concert ticket stubs they'd attended, little notes she'd left him throughout the years that she'd thought he'd tossed. He'd not only kept them but examined them, folded them, placed them in a box with care. Christine sat on the storage unit floor, surrounded by remnants of a life she'd attempted to put behind her. This was not closure. This was something more complex. Evidence that he had noticed her, perhaps even loved her, but never followed through on it when it counted. She sat there for more than an hour, rummaging through the boxes, determining what to keep and what to leave behind. Ultimately, she only took the photos where she was genuinely content, not for him, but for her. She locked the unit before she left and dropped the key back into the envelope. She'd send it to him later. As she drove home, a strange peace descended on Christine. She understood that she didn't need Kody's letters, his photographs, or his remorse to make her legitimate. She'd lived those minutes, and that was sufficient. That evening, she placed the bracelet in a little jewelry box on her dresser, not because he had given it to her, but as a reminder to herself. She had always been worth seeing. and she didn't need his eyes to make it official. Christine assumed sending the key back to Kody would be the last of it. She slid it into a simple white envelope, with only his name scribbled in her steady, even script. No return address. No message. She wanted it to speak volumes without saying anything. I've seen what you hid, I've taken what I desired, and I'm finished. 2 days later she put it in the mailbox, and just walked away, without ever turning to look back. For the first time in weeks, her thoughts finally started to subside. She cooked supper without dwelling on his words. She slept at night without replaying their last encounter. She even found herself humming when folding clothes, something she hadn't done since the Polaroid arrived. But the tranquility did not last. It was 3 nights afterwards when she felt the knock at her door. Not a courteous rap. A thudding, deliberate knock that caused her heart to stumble. She looked at the clock. 9:47 p.m. Too late for neighbors. Too soon for trouble, but late enough that it felt wrong. When she opened the door, Kody stood there. His hair was blown back. His coat only half zipped. His eyes shining in a way that made her stomach knot. You went to the storage unit, he told her. His voice low and even. Christine said nothing. She merely stepped out onto the porch and shut the door behind her, crossing her arms. You gave me the key. What did you think I should do? I didn't think you'd empty it, he shot back. I didn't empty it, she replied sharply. I took what mattered to me. The rest is still there. Kody's jaw flexed. You don't understand, Christine. Those boxes, they weren't just things. They were. He stopped himself, glancing away as if he'd already said too much. They were what? She demanded. They were proof, he said at last. Proof of the life we'd had, of the fact that it counted. Christine's laugh was curt and acrid. It counted to you when it was hidden away in a dusty storage unit. Not when I lived it. Not when I needed you to be there. Not fair, he said, advancing. I held on to those things because I couldn't let go. Because I knew someday you'd get it. Get what? She interrupted. That you loved me too late? He winced. And for a moment, she thought he was going to stand down. But his tone changed instead, turning hard. I never asked you to love me in return, Christine. I merely wanted you to realize that I never stopped caring. That even if it didn't work out with the others, you were. She raised a hand to stop him. Don't revise history for me. You had all those years to make me feel noticed. And you didn't. Whatever you imagine about what those boxes are, they do not negate what you did, or did not do, when it counted. Kody's eyes flashed with something cold. Frustration, perhaps even anger. So that's it? You take your little stack of happy memories and just leave the rest to decay? Yes, she replied, matter-of-factly. They stood there in silence, the heavy night air between them. Then Kody backed away slowly. You don't even know what else is in there. Christine's heart started to beat faster. What do you mean? Box 4, he told her. Bottom of the pile. You didn't leave it, did you? Her stomach plummeted. She had only remembered 3. I'm not playing games of scavenger hunt with you, Kody, she told him sternly. But he just gave a small knowing grin. Maybe you should. Or maybe you should just set the building on fire and never know what you left behind. With that, he turned and headed down the stairs, vanishing into the shadows without another comment. Christine stood stock still for a moment, her breath misting in the chilly air. She despised the fact that he still had this kind of control, the power to plant a small seed of doubt in her head and leave. For the remainder of the evening, she attempted to leave it behind, but his words continued to rotate in her mind. Box 4, bottom of stack. By dawn she talked herself into it not being important. But by the afternoon, she was once again at the storage unit. The door creaked open once more, and there they were, the 3 boxes where she'd set them. She pushed them to one side, her heart racing, until she saw it, a 4th box, smaller, stuck in the back corner, half tucked under an old blanket. She hauled it out. It was lighter than she'd anticipated. When she opened the top, she stopped. There were letters inside, not only from her but from all the other wives too. Some were neatly folded, others crumpled, some never opened. She knew her own handwriting on envelopes, marked years ago. But there was more. Underneath the letters was a black leather-bound book, frayed at the edges. She opened it and discovered page after page of Kody's handwriting. But this time, not about memories. It was about each of them, written as case files. Her stomach churned reading. Mary. Obstinate, defensive, but loyal when backed into a corner. Janelle, practical, aloof, will never prioritize me. Robin, emotional, clingy, ready to stand up for me even when in the wrong. Christine, volatile, unstable, won't be controlled. She flipped farther, her hand shaking. The entries became more detailed. Recorded private conversations verbatim, notes about their fights, even his prognostications about how each of the relationships would end. And then she discovered something that made her catch her breath. Under her name, dated just months before their separation. She'll leave first. I won't stop her. But she'll come back when she sees the others won't give her what I did. I just have to keep the door open. Christine's vision was blurry with a combination of anger and incredulity. He hadn't left those boxes out of affection. He'd left them for leverage, a reminder to himself that he still controlled them all. She stuffed the journal back in the box, and her heart pounding in her ears. She locked the unit once more, though she did not remove the key. She left it dangling in the lock, gently swaying in the cold wind. Back at home, she sat at the kitchen table, gripping her coffee mug until her knuckles ached. The realization was both crushing and liberating. Kody hadn't been trying to make peace. He'd been trying to keep her tethered. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You found it. Christine stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back. And now I'm done. No answer arrived. But she didn't require one. She recognized that this would not be the first of many attempts he made to bring her back. The only difference now was that she had seen the truth, and there was no way she was going to glance back over her shoulder. Nevertheless, that night when she lay in bed, she couldn't help but ponder who else he'd written to. And if they should be told. And that question prevented her from sleeping. Morning sunlight streamed in through the windows, warming the house with a gentle light. Christine sat at the kitchen table, cradling a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. The quiet background hum of her children playing in the living room was like a soft reminder of how far she had come, how much serenity she had hacked out of a life that was once hectic and oppressive. The day before's encounter with Kody still haunted her, a blend of residual pain, wary relief, and a strange sense of closure. She had no need to unwrap the gift he had left. Its sitting on the counter was sufficient. An unspoken reminder of the man who shared her universe once but no longer ruled it. Her children whizzed by, giggling and fighting playfully, and Christine permitted herself to finally breathe for the first time in years. She looked around the room, taking in the tiny touches she had made to make the house feel like home at last. Framed pictures, warm blankets, colorful plants on the windowsill. This was her home, her sanctuary, a testament to her strength and independence. Outside, life went on. Neighbors taking dogs for walks, the distant rumble of morning traffic. And yet in her apartment there was a silence more meaningful than any words. Christine recalled Kody's frantic entreaties, his sobbing confessions, the exposed vulnerability. She ached, yes, but it was balanced with an unshakable certainty. She had made her choices, her limits, her health. Her phone vibrated with texts from friends checking in, their words of encouragement a salve for the lingering unease. Christine smiled weakly, responding with affection but no hesitation. She had people who loved her for herself, and that knowledge made all the difference. Her gaze wandered back to the counter, where the present lay. She touched the tightly wrapped box, tracing the edges with her fingers, and felt the burden of unresolved words and unrealized vows. For an instant she let herself recreate what might have been, a wisp of longing and the shadows of a history that had formed her. But the image vanished like mist at dawn, leaving only the precision of all that she had become. Christine stood and moved towards the living room, her children embracing her with hugs and laughter. She hugged them close, breathing in the comfort of home, of family, of life regained. The gift sat where it had left, unopened, a silent witness to a tale that had stopped, or at least suspended. She didn't require answers. She didn't require reconciliation. What was important was that she had discovered herself. Out the window, she saw Kody's car leaving, its existence already lost in the distance. Christine let out a final sigh, a combination of relief and pained introspection. The world outside kept its beat, but within her heart remained firm, rooted in the fact that she was the one with the power to choose, to move on, to stay unmoved. She faced her children again, laughter echoing the space once more, and in this instant Christine knew quiet victory. The door behind her was shut on the past, but it was open very wide to the life she'd chosen. And while questions still hung, and while the gift lay unopened, one thing was certain: she was there, she was strong, and the future was hers to mold. The camera would rest one last time on the gift, its visibility a reminder of residual what-ifs, before fading to the gentle light of dawn, and leaving us to ponder whether forgiveness will ever be possible or whether some doors are forever closed.